Between 1096 and 1500, roughly 50,000 young men crammed into freezing, unheated rooms across Europe, surviving on tripe, weak ale, and 3 hours of sleep, all for a piece of paper that took 7 years to earn. The violence was constant. The drinking was legendary. And in one weekend in 1355, nearly 100 people died over a single complaint about wine quality. Here's what life was really like at a medieval university. Before the story, if these help you sleep, like or subscribe would be cool. Also drop where you're listening from and the time. I check the comments and it's crazy seeing people from like Australia and Norway on the same video. Okay, tonight it's medieval Oxford. But wait, are you comfortable? No, really, check. Pillows, blankets, the whole deal. Where we're going, you'll want to be settled, your eyes open to darkness. Not the comfortable darkness of your bedroom right now, with its familiar shapes and soft glow from whatever screen you forgot to turn off. This is medieval darkness, the kind where you can't see your own hand in front of your face, the kind where anything could be lurking 3 feet away and you'd never know. The year is 1350, you're 14 years old, your name is William, and you've just arrived in Oxford after walking for 9 days straight from your village in Somerset. Your feet are bleeding. Your stomach hasn't had anything in it except some stale bread for the past 2 days. And the smell hitting your nostrils right now is something you will never, ever forget. It's a mix of things, really. Human waste, because people just dump their chamber pots out the windows here. Rotting food from the market stalls that closed hours ago. Something sweet and sickly underneath it all that you don't want to think about too hard. Because you know what that smell is. Bodies. The plague swept through Oxford just 2 years ago. Killed somewhere between a third and half of everyone in the city. They're still finding corpses in abandoned buildings. Still burning possessions that nobody wants to claim. The death is everywhere, soaked into the stones, drifting in the air, and you've come here on purpose, to get an education. Your father sold 2 cows to make this happen. 2 cows that your family desperately needed. Your mother cried for 3 days straight when you left, convinced she'd never see you again. Your younger brother begged to come with you, and you had to tell him no, because there was only enough money for one. You're standing in the middle of a narrow street, completely lost. The buildings lean toward each other overhead, blocking out what little moonlight there is. You can hear rats scuttling somewhere nearby. Lots of rats. The plague didn't kill them. If anything, there are more now than ever. You don't know where you're supposed to go. You don't know anyone here. You have a letter from your parish priest tucked inside your shirt, damp with sweat, that's supposed to prove you can read Latin well enough to study here. That's it. That's all you have, plus 17 pennies sewn into the hem of your cloak, your entire family's savings. A door opens somewhere down the street. Yellow candlelight spills out, and you see a figure emerge. A young man, maybe 17 or 18, wearing a long dark robe. His head is weird. There's a circular patch shaved right on top of his skull, surrounded by a ring of hair. You'll learn later that this is called a tonsure. Every student at Oxford has to get one. It marks you as a member of the clergy, which technically all scholars are, even if you're never going to become a priest. The tonsure means you're under church law, not civil law. It means if you get in trouble, the town authorities can't touch you. It also means you look absolutely ridiculous, like someone placed a bowl on your head and shaved around it. The young man spots you standing there in the dark, clearly lost, clearly terrified. "Fresh meat," he says in Latin. Not English, Latin. Because that's the only language you're allowed to speak here. "Looking for the halls?" You nod. You try to respond in Latin, but your tongue feels thick and clumsy. The Latin you learned from Father Oswin back home suddenly seems completely inadequate. "This way," the young man says, switching to English with a small smirk. "I'm Geoffrey, 2nd year. You'll owe me for this later." You follow him through the winding streets, past taverns that are still roaring with noise despite the late hour, past a group of students who are very clearly drunk, singing something obscene in Latin that you only half understand, past a dark alley where you hear what sounds like a fist fight in progress. Geoffrey doesn't even glance at the fighting. "Town and gown," he says casually. "Happens every night. Don't get involved. The townies hate us. We hate them. It's been that way since before the plague, and it'll be that way long after we're all dead." He leads you to a building that looks like it might collapse at any moment. 3 stories of timber and plaster, leaning dangerously to one side. A painted sign above the door shows a red lion, though the paint is peeling so badly it looks more like a red blob. "Red Lion Hall," Geoffrey announces. "Home sweet home. The warden's name is Master Blackwood. He's asleep right now, thank God, so we won't have to deal with him until morning. I'll show you to the dormitory." Inside, the building is somehow colder than it was outside. There are no fires allowed in student quarters. None. Even in the dead of winter. The theory is that fire is too dangerous with so many young idiots living packed together, and besides, suffering builds character. You'll spend the next 7 years suffering, all right. Geoffrey leads you up a narrow staircase that creaks with every step. The smell is different in here. Less death, more unwashed bodies, sweat and sour ale, and something that might be old cheese. The dormitory is a single long room with wooden partitions creating small sleeping areas. You can hear snoring from behind most of them. Geoffrey points to an empty space near the far end. "That belonged to Robert," he says, his voice dropping to something almost sad. "The plague. Anyway, it's yours now. You'll get a mattress tomorrow. For tonight, there's straw on the floor." You look at the space. Maybe 4 feet wide, 6 feet long. The floor is bare wood, dark with years of grime. The straw Geoffrey mentioned is a thin scattering, nothing like the thick bedding you had back home. Back home, where right now your mother is probably lying awake worrying about you, where your little brother is sleeping in the spot where you used to sleep, because your family only had 2 beds, and now there's room for him to stretch out. You spread your cloak on the straw and lower yourself down. The cold seeps through immediately. Your teeth start chattering. This is it. This is where you'll sleep for the next 7 years. This is the grand university education your father sold 2 cows to give you. You don't sleep much that first night. The other students snore and mutter, and occasionally cry out from nightmares. Somewhere in the building, there's a scratching sound that you desperately hope is mice and not rats. The cold settles into your bones like it's planning to stay permanently. When you finally drift off, it's into dreams of home. The bell wakes you, a church bell somewhere close, clanging with a violence that seems designed specifically to hurt. It's still dark outside. It feels like you only just closed your eyes. Every muscle in your body aches from sleeping on the floor. Your back has developed a cramp that makes you want to scream. Get up. Geoffrey is shaking your shoulder. First lecture starts at 5. Don't be late. Master Blackwood beats late comers. 5 in the morning. 5. And this isn't a special occasion. This is every single day. For 7 years. You stumble out of your sleeping space and join the stream of exhausted students shuffling toward the stairs. Everyone looks roughly as miserable as you feel. Red eyes, hunched shoulders, expressions of deep resentment toward whoever invented the concept of education. In the dim light of early dawn, you get your first real look at your fellow students. They're all male, of course. No women allowed. They range in age from boys who look even younger than you to men in their mid-20s who've been here for over a decade. Some of them have the tonsure. Others, like you, still have their full heads of hair. That'll change soon enough. The lecture hall is a stone building a few streets away. Stone, which means it's somehow even colder than your timber dormitory. Your breath fogs in the air as you find a spot on one of the long wooden benches. There are no desks, no paper. Paper is too expensive for students. Instead, you have a small wooden tablet coated with wax and a stylus to scratch notes into it. The notes can be scraped away and the wax reused over and over, because nothing here is allowed to be convenient. The master enters. He's old, ancient by medieval standards, maybe 45. He wears a black robe and a look of profound contempt for everyone in the room. He begins speaking in Latin, fast Latin, the kind of Latin that makes the stuff you learned back home sound like baby talk. You understand maybe one word in 5. This is grammar, the first subject of the trivium, the 3 basic disciplines every student has to master. Grammar, logic, rhetoric. 3 subjects that sound simple, but will consume the next 3 to 4 years of your life. And grammar doesn't mean what you think it means. It's not just learning how sentences work. It's the study of language itself, how words create meaning, how to read ancient text without making an idiot of yourself, how to express complex ideas in precise, elegant Latin. The master is discussing Donatus, a Roman grammarian who died about 1,000 years ago. His textbook is still the foundation of everything students learn here. You're reading words written by a man who lived when Rome still had emperors. Your head is pounding. Your stomach is growling. You haven't eaten anything since yesterday morning's stale bread. And you won't eat anything until 10 o'clock, because that's the rule. No food before 10. The lecture goes on, and on, and on. By the time the bell rings for the end of the first session, you've scratched a few barely legible notes into your wax tablet and developed a splitting headache. The other students are already rushing toward the door, heading for the dining hall. Food, finally. But when you get there, when you see what's being served, your heart sinks a little more. Tripe. It's tripe. Cow stomach, boiled into a greyish mass that smells faintly of farm and strongly of regret. This is what poor students eat, the ones whose fathers sold 2 cows to send them here. At the other end of the hall you can see the wealthy students, the sons of knights and merchants. They're eating something that looks like actual food. Pies, meat pies, with steam rising from them, golden crust flaking as they cut into them. There's roasted fowl, cheese, fresh bread instead of the hard 3-day-old stuff that's being handed to you. You eat your tripe. It's exactly as bad as it looks, but you're hungry enough that you don't care. After breakfast, it's more lectures, different master, same freezing room, same incomprehensible flood of Latin. This one is about logic, the art of thinking clearly, constructing arguments, identifying when someone is trying to trick you with bad reasoning. You'll need this skill, because in a few years, your entire academic career will depend on your ability to argue, publicly, in front of everyone, in Latin. It's called disputation, the heart of medieval education. A student proposes a thesis, other students attack it. The original student has to defend his position against all comers. If you can't argue, you can't graduate. If you can't graduate, those 2 cows died for nothing. But that's years away. Right now, you're just trying to stay awake. The afternoon brings another lecture. Rhetoric this time. The art of persuasion. How to make people believe what you're saying, even if what you're saying is complete nonsense. A useful skill, your master notes dryly, for anyone planning a career in the church or government. By 5 in the evening, when the lectures finally end, you're so exhausted you can barely see straight. Your brain feels like it's been beaten with a hammer. Your stomach is growling again because tripe, it turns out, is not particularly filling, but the day isn't over. Not yet. "Come on," Geoffrey says, grabbing your arm. "Dinner, then the barber. Master Blackwood wants all new students tonsured before tomorrow." The barber's shop is a cramped room that smells of blood and old soap. Yes, blood. Because barbers don't just cut hair here. They pull teeth. They lance boils. They do anything involving sharp objects and human flesh. The barber looks at your head with professional interest. "Nice thick hair," he says. "Shame to waste it." He picks up his razor. You close your eyes. The scraping sound is oddly loud. Cold air hits the top of your head as the hair comes away. It feels wrong, exposed, like a violation. When he's done, you look at yourself in a piece of polished metal that serves as a mirror. The bald circle on top of your head looks ridiculous. You look like a monk. You look like someone who's given up on normal life, which in a way you have. Geoffrey claps you on the shoulder as you leave the barber's shop. "Welcome to Oxford," he says. "You're one of us now." Tonight, lying on your straw in your freezing little partition, with your newly bald head cold against the rough wool of your cloak, you think about your family, about your mother, about those 2 cows. You think about the 7 years stretching ahead of you. The thousands of hours of lectures in freezing rooms, the tripe, the disputations you'll have to survive, the constant grinding pressure to learn more, argue better, prove yourself worthy. You think about how far from home you are, how alone. And then, because you're 14 and exhausted and your whole world has just been turned upside down, you let yourself cry a little, quietly, so the other students won't hear. Just a few tears sliding down your cheeks onto the straw. Tomorrow you'll be stronger. Tomorrow you'll start learning. Tomorrow you'll take the first steps toward becoming the person your father believes you can be. But tonight, in the darkness, you're just a scared kid a long way from home. The church bell will ring again in a few hours. 5 in the morning comes early. You close your eyes and try to sleep. The second day is worse than the first, not because anything especially terrible happens, just because now you know. Now you understand that yesterday wasn't some kind of horrible introduction period. Yesterday was just life. And today is more of the same. Your back screams when you try to sit up. Sleeping on thin straw over bare wood has done something awful to muscles you didn't even know you had. The cold has settled into your joints like an unwelcome guest who's decided to stay forever. And you're hungry. God, you're hungry. That tripe from yesterday went through you faster than you'd like to admit, and breakfast is still 4 hours away. Geoffrey finds you limping toward the wash basin. There's one basin for the entire dormitory. 40 students, one basin. The water in it has a thin skin of ice on top. "You look like death," Geoffrey says cheerfully. "First week's the worst. You'll get used to it. Or you won't, and you'll go home. About a quarter of new students leave before Christmas." A quarter. That's a lot. You think about your father's cows, about your mother's tears, about your little brother sleeping in your old spot. You're not going home. The washwater is so cold it makes your teeth hurt. You splash some on your face anyway because the alternative is showing up to lecture smelling like the straw you slept on. The masters don't appreciate that. Here's something nobody tells you about medieval universities. Everything is Latin. Everything. Not just the lectures, the conversations, the prayers, the jokes, if you can call them that. Even when you're just asking where the privy is, you're supposed to do it in Latin. And your Latin, the Latin you were so proud of back home, the Latin that made Father Oswin call you his best student, is garbage. It's not that you can't read it. You can. Slowly. Painfully. But speaking it, thinking in it, that's different. The other students rattle off sentences like they were born doing it. You open your mouth and what comes out sounds like a sick cow trying to recite poetry. Ubi est, the thing where you trail off, gesturing vaguely at your stomach. Geoffrey stares at you for a second, then bursts out laughing. Latrina, he says. The word is latrina, and it's behind the hall, against the wall. Don't fall in. Someone did that last month. You don't ask how someone falls into a latrine. You don't want to know. The first lecture of the day is more grammar, the same master as yesterday, the ancient one with the contempt. He's discussing participles now. Past participles, future participles, some kind of participles you've never even heard of. You scratch notes into your wax tablet. Most of them are wrong. You know they're wrong because the student next to you keeps glancing over and wincing. His name is Edmund. He's from somewhere up north. York, maybe. Or Newcastle. Somewhere with an accent so thick you can barely understand him even when he's speaking English, which he's not supposed to be doing. That's not what he said, Edmund whispers during a pause in the lecture. He said passive, not active. You look at your notes. Active, passive. The words swim in front of your eyes. I don't understand the difference, you admit. Edmund sighs. It's not a mean sigh. More like he's already exhausted and the day's barely started. I'll explain later, after dinner, if we don't freeze to death first. The cold is a constant thing. You're never not cold. Even when you're walking between buildings, moving fast to try to generate some heat, the wind cuts through your thin robe like it's not even there. Your toes have gone numb so many times you've stopped counting. The wealthy students, you notice, have thicker robes, lined with something, fur maybe. They also have actual shoes instead of the worn leather wraps you're using. Their breath still fogs in the lecture halls just like yours, but they look less miserable about it. One of them catches you staring. His name, you'll learn later, is Richard. His father is a knight. Not a particularly important knight, but still, a knight. That makes Richard practically royalty compared to you, a yeoman's son who's here because his father sold livestock. Richard smiles. It's not a nice smile. Country boy, he says in Latin. His Latin is perfect. Of course it is. He probably had private tutors. First time seeing real clothes? You don't know how to respond. Your Latin isn't good enough for a witty comeback, and even if it was, picking a fight with a knight's son in your first week seems like a bad idea. So you just look away, pretend you didn't hear. Richard laughs and turns back to his friends. They're all laughing. At you. This, you realise, is how it's going to be. There are levels here, hierarchies. The rich students at the top living their comfortable lives with their meat pies and fur-lined robes. The poor students at the bottom, eating tripe and sleeping on straw, and you're at the bottom. Edmund is at the bottom too. That's probably why he offered to help you. After dinner, which is more tripe because apparently that's all poor students ever eat, Edmund takes you to a corner of the common room and tries to explain Latin grammar in a way that makes sense. He's good at it. Better than the master, honestly. Maybe because he remembers what it was like to not understand. Or maybe because he's not 1,000 years old and filled with contempt for everyone younger than him. Active means you're doing the thing, Edmund says. Passive means the thing is being done to you. Like, he thinks for a second. The dog bites the man. Active. The man is bitten by the dog. Passive. Same event, different perspective. Something clicks in your head. A small something. But still, progress. Why does it matter, you ask? Because Latin cares about these things. English, you can be sloppy. Latin, every word has to be exactly right or the whole sentence falls apart. The masters notice. Trust me. You practice until the light fades. There are no candles for students. Candles cost money, and more importantly, candles start fires. So when the sun goes down, you're done. Whatever you haven't learned yet, you'll have to figure out tomorrow. Edmund walks with you back to the dormitory. He's quiet for a while, then says something that catches you off guard. My father's a tanner. You wait. That's clearly not the whole story. Do you know what tanners do? They soak animal skins in piss. Literally. Buckets of piss. The smell gets into everything. Your clothes, your hair, your skin. People cross the street when they see you coming. He kicks at a stone in the road. When I was 10, my father told me I had a choice. I could spend my life elbow deep in piss, or I could learn to read. He paid a monk to teach me Latin. Every spare penny the family had for 5 years, and here I am. Here you are, you echo, freezing my arse off and eating cow stomach, but not smelling like piss, so that's something. You both laugh. It's a tired laugh, but real. My father sold 2 cows, you offer. It feels only fair to share. 2 cows is a lot. It's everything. If I fail, my family is ruined. Edmund nods slowly. He gets it. He's carrying the same weight you are. Different details, same burden. That night, lying on your straw with the cold seeping through every layer, you decide to write a letter home. You don't have paper. Paper is expensive. But Geoffrey showed you where to get parchment scraps, the offcuts from the real stuff that monks use for manuscripts. They're irregular shapes, sometimes with holes, but they work. You write by moonlight, straining your eyes in the dim glow coming through the cracks in the shutters. To my most honoured father, you begin. Because that's how these letters are supposed to start. Formal, respectful. Even though what you really want to write is, please, help. I'm cold and scared and everyone here is smarter than me, and I think I might have made a terrible mistake. You tell him you arrived safely. You tell him the lectures are challenging but rewarding. You tell him you've made friends. You tell him the masters are impressed with your Latin. Lies. All of it. But what else can you say? He sold 2 cows for this. Then you get to the part that matters. The city is expensive, you write, and makes many demands. I must rent my lodgings, buy necessaries, and provide for many other things which I cannot now specify. That last bit is clever, you think. Things which I cannot now specify covers a lot of ground. It could mean books. It could mean warmer clothes. It could mean bribes to the masters to overlook your terrible Latin. It could also mean ale and gambling, but your father doesn't need to know that's an option. Wherefore I respectfully beg your paternity, that by the promptings of divine pity you may assist me, so that I may be able to complete what I have well begun. Divine pity, nice touch. You're essentially asking your father to help because God would want him to. You sign the letter, roll it up, and try to figure out how to get it home. There's no postal service. You'll have to find someone travelling towards Somerset and pay them to carry it. That costs money too. Everything costs money. Money you don't have. The 3rd day brings your first real encounter with the townspeople. You're walking to an afternoon lecture, cutting through the market square because it's faster when a cart nearly runs you down. The driver, A red-faced man with the arms like tree trunks screams something at you in English. It's not flattering. "Bloody scholars," he spits. "Think you own the whole damn city. Go back where you came from." You step out of the way, heart pounding. The cart rattles past. Other townspeople are watching. Some of them are smiling. Not nice smiles. Geoffrey explained this to you on the first night. Town and gown. The locals hate the students, and the students hate them right back. It's been going on for generations. There have been fights, riots even. People have died. Just 5 years ago, 2 students were lynched, actually killed by the townspeople. That's why some scholars left Oxford entirely and went to start a new university at Cambridge, which honestly sounds like going from one freezing hellhole to another, but at least nobody was trying to murder them there. The hatred runs deep. Students have privileges that locals don't. If a student commits a crime, they're tried in church courts, not civil ones. Church courts are gentler. No executions, no mutilations. The worst they'll do is excommunicate you or throw you in church prison, which is apparently nicer than regular prison. The townspeople think that's unfair, and honestly, they might have a point. But you're not about to say that out loud. You hurry to your lecture, keeping your head down. That night, Geoffrey takes you and Edmund to a tavern. "You need to relax," he says. "Both of you. You look like you haven't slept in a week." The tavern is called the Swindle Stock. It's on the corner of 2 main streets, right in the centre of town. The sign outside shows a pig in a scale, which apparently is supposed to mean something, but nobody can remember what. Inside, it's warm. Actually warm. There's a fire burning in the hearth, and the heat hits your face like a blessing from God himself. You hadn't realised how cold you were until suddenly you're not. The place is packed. Students mostly, though you spot a few townsmen in the corner. The air is thick with smoke and noise and the smell of roasting meat that you can't afford. Serving girls weave between the tables, carrying pitchers and dodging hands that grab at them. You find a spot on a bench near the fire. The wood is sticky with years of spilled ale, and someone has carved something obscene into the surface. But you don't care. You're warm. That's all that matters. The ale is weak, thin and sour, not like the proper stuff your mother used to make. But it's cheap, just a penny for a pitcher, and after a few cups you stop noticing the taste. Your empty stomach probably doesn't help. The ale goes straight to your head, making everything slightly fuzzy around the edges. "This is where it all happens," Geoffrey says, gesturing around the room with his cup. "Business deals, fights, romances that end in disaster. Everything important in Oxford happens in a tavern," Edmund snorts. "Everything important to you, maybe. Some of us actually study. Studying is overrated. I know a fellow who studied 16 hours a day. Know where he is now? Where? Dead. Fell asleep in a lecture and never woke up. The master didn't notice for 2 hours. You're pretty sure that story isn't true, but you laugh anyway. Geoffrey tells more stories. About students who went mad from studying too much. About masters who had secret families hidden in cottages outside town. About a scholar who supposedly summoned a demon in his room and had to be exorcised by a bishop. "True story," Geoffrey insists. "My second cousin knew the guy." Edmund rolls his eyes. "Your second cousin knows everybody who's ever done anything." "That's because my second cousin gets around." You laugh. Actually laugh. "For the first time since you left home. Maybe this won't be so bad. Maybe you can do this." At the next table, a group of townsmen are drinking. They're loud, getting louder. One of them keeps looking over at your group with an expression that says he's thinking about starting something. Geoffrey notices. His whole body tenses just slightly. His hand moves toward his belt where you know he keeps a small knife. Every student carries a knife, for eating, officially. For other things, if necessary. "Time to go," Geoffrey says quietly. "Finish your drinks." You drain your cup and follow him out into the cold. The townsman's eyes follow you the whole way. Outside, the night air is sharp enough to hurt. Your brief warmth from the fire is already fading. "That was close," Edmund mutters. "That was nothing," Geoffrey says. "Wait until you see an actual fight, then you'll know what close looks like." You walk back to the hall in silence. The streets are mostly empty now. A few other students hurrying home before curfew. A drunk singing somewhere in the distance. The eternal sound of rats. The moon is out, casting long shadows between the buildings. Your breath fogs in the air. The warmth from the tavern is already a memory, and the cold is reclaiming you inch by inch. You pass a church, St. Mary's, the University Church. Its tower looms against the night sky, a black shape blocking out the stars. Somewhere inside, there are candles burning, warmth, light. But it's locked up until morning prayers. Edmund stumbles on a loose cobblestone and catches himself against a wall. "Shouldn't have had that last cup," he mutters. "Probably not. Worth it though. First time I've felt warm in a week." You think about that, about how the most basic human comfort, just being warm, has become a rare treat. Back home, there was always a fire, always something cooking over it. You never thought about warmth because it was just there. Now you think about it constantly, dream about it. The fire in the tavern was the first time you've been properly warm since you arrived in Oxford. Somewhere in this city, in one of the nicer halls, Richard the Knight's son is probably sleeping in an actual bed with actual blankets. Fur-lined blankets, knowing his type. His belly is full of meat pie and good wine. His future is secure because his father has connections, has money, has everything that matters in this world. You're sleeping on straw. Your belly is full of weak ale and a growing sense of dread. Your future depends entirely on whether you can learn to speak Latin without sounding like a dying cow, whether you can survive 7 years of this, whether your mind and body can endure what's coming. But you're still here. You didn't run home. You didn't give up. The hall appears out of the darkness, its crooked shape somehow comforting now. Home, or the closest thing you have to one. Edmund peels off toward his own sleeping space with a mumbled goodnight. Geoffrey is already snoring in his partition. The dormitory is full of the sounds of sleeping students. Breathing, rustling, the occasional murmur from someone lost in dreams. You lie down on your straw. It doesn't feel quite as hard as it did the first night, or maybe you're just getting used to it. Your newly shaved tonsure prickles against your cloak. Tomorrow there will be more lectures, more Latin you don't understand, more cold, more hunger, more Richard and his smirking friends looking down at you from their comfortable heights. But also more Edmund, more Geoffrey, more weak ale in warm taverns, more of whatever strange fellowship grows between people who are suffering the same things. 1 week down, roughly 364 to go. You pull your cloak tighter, curl up against the cold, and let your eyes close. Your last thought before sleep takes you is of your mother's face. You hope she got some rest tonight. You hope she's not lying awake worrying about you. You're fine. You think at her across the miles. I'm fine. This is fine. You're not entirely sure you believe it, but you're not giving up. Not yet. 3 months in, and you can finally ask where the toilet is without making people laugh. Small victories. You take them where you can. Your Latin is still terrible by Oxford standards, but it's getting better. You can follow most of the lectures now. understand maybe 7 words out of 10 instead of 1 in 5. Edmund still helps you in the evenings, scratching explanations into his wax tablet, and slowly, painfully, the language is starting to make sense. The cold hasn't gotten any easier. If anything, it's gotten worse. November in Oxford is a special kind of misery. The wind comes howling down from the north, cutting through the streets like a knife. Your fingers are cracked and bleeding from the dry air. Your nose runs constantly. Everyone is coughing, but you're still here. That counts for something. Today is different, though. Today, you're going to see your first disputation. Geoffrey has been talking about it all week. A master of theology is going to defend a controversial position about free will. Other masters will attack him. Students are encouraged to attend, partly because it is educational, and partly because it's the closest thing to entertainment Oxford has to offer. It's like a fight, Geoffrey explains as you walk toward the Great Hall, but with words instead of fists. And if you lose, you don't bleed. You just look like an idiot in front of everyone you know. That sounds worse than bleeding. Exactly. That's why it's fun to watch. The hall is packed. Students are crammed onto benches, standing against walls, even sitting on the floor near the front. Masters in their black robes occupy special seats, looking severe and important. The noise is incredible. Everyone's talking at once, placing bets, arguing about what's going to happen. Yes, bets. Students bet on disputations like they bet on everything else. Who will win? How long it will last? Whether anyone will get so angry they storm out. Edmund finds you a spot near a pillar where you can see but also lean against something. Your back still aches from the sleeping situation, and standing for hours isn't going to help. The disputation begins. The defending master, a thin man with a nose like a bird's beak, stands at a podium and announces his thesis. Something about divine grace and human choice. You don't fully understand it, but the basic idea seems to be that humans have some ability to choose their own path, even though God already knows what's going to happen. The hall goes quiet. Even the gamblers stop whispering. This is what everyone came for. An attacking master rises. He's younger, fiercer, with the look of someone who's been waiting for this moment his whole life. His robes are newer than the others, his tonsure freshly shaved, a man with something to prove. If God knows all, he says in crisp Latin, then how can human choice be genuine? Surely our choices are merely the unfolding of what was always destined to occur. The defending master smiles. He's been doing this for decades. He's heard this argument before, probably made it himself when he was young and hungry. To foreknow is not to cause, he replies. I may know that the sun will rise tomorrow. That does not mean I caused it to rise. The hall murmurs, a good point. Someone near you whispers, got him, in English, forgetting the Latin rule. The attacking master doesn't flinch. But God does not merely know, he counters, his voice rising. God created. God designed. If he designed the world knowing every choice that would be made within it, then he is the author of those choices, not us. Back and forth. Point and counterpoint. Each master building elaborate logical structures, then trying to knock down the other's construction. It's chess with words. And the stakes, at least according to the participants, are nothing less than the nature of reality itself. A third master joins in, then a fourth, each one taking a side, adding layers of argument, citing authorities you've never heard of. Augustine, Boethius, someone called the philosopher, who you'll later learn is Aristotle. The defending master is sweating now, not from the heat, there is no heat, but from the pressure, from the weight of 5 brilliant minds trying to tear his position apart while hundreds of students watch and judge. This is what failure looks like here. Not a quiet mark on a piece of paper, a public humiliation. Everyone you know watching as you stumble, stutter, fail to find the words. You don't understand half of what they're saying. The theological vocabulary is beyond you, but you understand the rhythm of it. The way they pause before delivering a crucial point. The way the audience holds its breath when a good argument lands. The way the defending master's hand shakes slightly when he's pushed into a corner. This is what you're here for. This is what 7 years of suffering is supposed to produce. The ability to stand up in front of everyone and defend your ideas against the smartest people in the room. The thought is terrifying. "That'll be you someday," Edmund whispers. "Don't remind me." "You'll be fine. Look at that guy." He nods toward the attacking master. He's basically just saying the same thing 3 different ways. Once you learn the tricks, it's not that hard. You're not sure you believe him, but it's nice of him to say. The disputation ends 2 hours later with no clear winner. That's how these things usually go, apparently. Both sides claim victory. The audience argues about it for weeks. Nothing is actually resolved, but everyone feels very intellectual. Walking back to the hall, you notice something you've been noticing more and more lately. Empty buildings. Oxford is full of them now. Houses with no one living inside. Shops with their shutters permanently closed. Entire streets that feel abandoned. The plague did this. Killed so many people that there's no one left to fill the spaces they left behind. You pass what used to be a bakery. The sign is still there, faded and peeling. A painted loaf of bread that nobody will ever buy again. Through the grimy window you can see shapes inside. Furniture maybe. Personal belongings. Everything left exactly as it was the day the baker died. "They say there are bodies still in some of them," Geoffrey says quietly. "Nobody wants to go in. Bad luck, bad smells. So they just stay there." "For how long?" "Until someone works up the nerve, I guess. Or until the buildings fall down. You think about the person who baked bread here, who woke up every morning before dawn to start the ovens, who sold loaves to the students and townspeople, who probably never imagined that their shop would become a tomb. 2 years ago. That's all it was. 2 years since the plague swept through, and already it feels like ancient history. Life has moved on. The survivors are busy surviving. The dead are just empty spaces where people used to be. Your hall lost 3 students to the plague, according to Geoffrey. Before your time. Their sleeping spaces were empty for months before new students came to fill them. Sometimes, late at night, you wonder if you're sleeping where a dead man used to sleep. If his ghost is hovering somewhere nearby, annoyed that some country boy is using his straw, you try not to think about it too much. A few weeks later, a letter arrives. It's from your father. You recognize his handwriting, the careful, deliberate strokes of a man who learned to write late in life and never got comfortable with it. Your heart races as you break the seal. "My son," it begins, "we received your letter with great joy and relief. To know you arrived safely is worth more than any cows." You smile at that. He's making a joke. Your father doesn't make jokes often. He writes about home, the weather, the crops, your brother's progress in learning to read, your mother's health, which is good, thank God, normal things, comfortable things. Then he gets to the money. "We're sending what we can spare with the bearer of this letter. It is not much. The winter has been hard, and there will be nothing more until spring at the earliest. Use it wisely. We are proud of you." Enclosed is a small pouch. You count the coins inside. 8 pennies. 8 pennies to last you until spring. That's maybe 3 months. And you need parchment. You need to replace the shoes that are falling apart. You need to pay your share of the hall fees, which are due next month. You need candles if you want to study after dark, and you need food when the hall's tripe becomes too disgusting to stomach. 8 pennies won't cover half of that. You sit with the letter for a long time, reading it over and over. The pride in your father's words, the love in your mother's brief postscript. Just 3 lines about how she prays for you every night and how your brother is growing tall and asks about you constantly. The terrible inadequacy of 8 pennies. They're doing their best. You know that. The cows were everything they had, and now they're scraping together what little remains to send to you. Your father probably skipped meals to save these coins. Your mother probably sold something she didn't want to sell. If you asked for more, they would find a way to send it. They would starve themselves if necessary. You can't ask for more. You read the letter one more time, then fold it carefully and tuck it inside your robe, close to your chest. You'll read it again tonight, and tomorrow, whenever you need to remember why you're doing this, which means you need to find another way to survive. Edmund has the same problem. His father's tannery isn't producing as much as it used to. Something about the plague reducing demand for leather. Fewer people means fewer shoes, fewer saddles, fewer everything. The economy's broken in ways nobody quite understands yet. I'm thinking about copying manuscripts, Edmund says one evening, huddled near the common room's cold fireplace. The monasteries pay for that. If you can write a clean hand, they'll give you a few pennies per page. Can you write a clean hand? He holds up his fingers, ink-stained, calloused from the stylus, steady. Clean enough. You look at your own hands, rougher, more used to farm work than fine writing. I'll practice, you say. December brings Christmas. Sort of. The university technically closes for the holiday, but that doesn't mean much for students who have nowhere else to go. Your family's too far away to visit. Edmund's is in the wrong direction. Geoffrey just shrugs and says he's not welcome at home anyway, without explaining why. So you stay, all 3 of you, plus maybe a dozen others who couldn't or wouldn't leave. The hall feels emptier than usual, quieter. The wealthy students have gone, of course. Richard and his fur-lined friends are probably at their family estates right now, eating venison and drinking spiced wine. The masters have retreated to their comfortable quarters. Even most of the servants have been given leave. What remains is the core of us, the ones with nowhere else to go. The few servants who remained put together a special meal, actual meat, some kind of bird roasted on a spit. Not enough for everyone to have a full portion, but enough for everyone to have something. There's bread too, soft for once instead of stale, and cheese. Real cheese, not the hard rind they usually give students. You eat slowly, savouring every bite. This is the first proper meat you've had since you arrived. The first time your stomach has actually felt full. The first time eating has been a pleasure rather than just a survival task. The taste is almost too much. Your mouth has forgotten what good food is like. The juices run down your chin and you don't even care because who's watching? Just Edmund and Geoffrey and a handful of other ragged students, all of them too busy eating to judge. "Merry Christmas," Edmund says, raising his cup of ale. His eyes are slightly wet. Maybe from the smoke, maybe not. "Merry Christmas," you and Geoffrey echo. Outside, snow is falling, thick white flakes drifting past the window, covering everything in silence. The streets are empty except for the occasional figure hurrying toward church. Bells are ringing from every direction, the sound softened by the snow, until it feels like it's coming from somewhere far away, somewhere holy. You think about your family. Your mother is probably at church right now praying. Your father standing beside her, uncomfortable in his feast day clothes, thinking about work he should be doing. Your brother fidgeting, counting the minutes until he can go home and eat. Do they have enough to eat this year? With 2 cows gone and 8 pennies sent to you? You push the thought away. It's Christmas. You're not allowed to be sad on Christmas. Somewhere, in warm halls and manor houses, Richard the Knight's son is probably eating a feast that would make this modest bird look like peasant scraps. Peacocks with their feathers put back on, boar's head with an apple in its mouth, pies with crusts shaped like castles, enough food to feed your entire hall for a week. But right now, in this moment, you don't care. You have food, you have friends, you have a fire in the common room, a rare concession from the warden for the holiday. The flames are small but real, crackling and popping, throwing dancing shadows on the walls. You're not alone. That's more than a lot of people have. After dinner, Geoffrey produces a pair of dice from somewhere inside his robe. Anyone feeling lucky? Edmund groans. You know gambling is forbidden. Lots of things are forbidden. That's never stopped anyone. You don't have money to gamble. Not really, but you pull out one of your precious pennies anyway because it's Christmas and you're slightly drunk and for once you want to feel like a normal person instead of a struggling survivor. You lose the penny in 3 rounds. Geoffrey wins it, along with 4 others from students who should have known better. Sorry, he says, not looking sorry at all. Better luck next time. There won't be a next time. That was my shoe repair fund. Then you'd better hope your shoes hold together until spring. They won't. You know they won't. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, there's warmth and food and the company of people who understand what you're going through. Tonight the bells are ringing across Oxford, calling out peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Tonight even the townspeople aren't fighting with the students. You close your eyes and let the warmth of the fire soak into your bones. Tomorrow you'll go back to worrying about money, about Latin, about disputations you'll have to survive, and masters who might fail you, and a future that feels increasingly uncertain. But tonight, you're just a boy far from home, spending Christmas with his friends, and that's enough. The snow keeps falling outside, covering Oxford in white, hiding the empty buildings and the forgotten dead under a blanket of soft silence. You watch it through the window for a while before you finally go to bed. Your straw feels almost comfortable tonight. Or maybe you're just too tired and full to notice the discomfort. Either way, you sleep better than you have in months. The new year brings the wealthy students back. They arrive in waves throughout January, carried by horses and servants and an air of casual superiority that makes you want to punch something. Richard shows up with a new fur-lined cloak and stories about the feast his family threw for Christmas. Apparently there was a swan, an actual swan, roasted and served with its feathers put back on. You ate a piece of anonymous bird and considered yourself lucky. Edmund handles it better than you do. Let them have their swans, he says. We'll have the last laugh when they can't argue their way out of a wet sack. Can they not argue? Richard? God, no. I've seen him in practice disputations. He panics the moment someone pushes back. All that money and he can't string 2 thoughts together under pressure. That makes you feel slightly better. February is brutal. The snow from Christmas has turned to ice, then to slush, then to a kind of freezing mud that gets into everything. Your shoes finally give up completely. The sole separates from the upper, and suddenly you're walking on the actual ground, feeling every frozen cobblestone through what's left of the leather. You can't afford new shoes. You can't even afford to repair these ones, not after the penny you lost gambling at Christmas. So you do what poor students have always done. You stuff straw into the gap and hope for the best. It doesn't work very well. Your feet are constantly wet, constantly cold. By the end of the month, your toes have a greyish tinge that probably isn't healthy, but you're still here, still attending lectures, still scratching notes into your wax tablet with fingers that barely bend anymore. Edmund's manuscript copying is going well, at least. He's bringing in a few pennies a week from a monastery across town. They're copying a Bible, apparently. Huge project. They need all the hands they can get. "You should try," he says one evening, showing you his latest work. The letters are neat and even, marching across the parchment in perfect rows. Your hand is getting better. It is getting better. You've been practicing every spare moment, borrowing Edmund's materials, training your fingers to make the shapes without thinking. Your Latin is improving too. You understood almost everything in today's lecture, answered a question correctly in front of the whole class. The master even nodded at you, which is practically a standing ovation by his standards. Small victories, still taking them where you can. The trouble starts on a Thursday. You're walking back from an afternoon lecture cutting through the market because old habits die hard, when you see a crowd forming near the fish stalls. Students and townspeople mixing in a way that never means anything good. At the centre is Geoffrey. He's facing off against a butcher, a massive man with forearms like hams and a face the colour of raw meat. Something about a chicken. Geoffrey bought a chicken apparently, and the butcher is claiming he didn't pay enough. "I paid what you asked," Geoffrey is saying in English. He switched languages because the butcher obviously doesn't know Latin. 2 pennies, that's what you said. I said 3. 2 for the bird, 1 for the cutting. You never said anything about cutting. It's always been 1 for the cutting. Everyone knows that. The crowd is getting bigger. Other butchers are drifting over, leaving their stalls unattended. Students are appearing from side streets, drawn by some invisible signal that one of their own is in trouble. You push through to stand beside Geoffrey. Edmund appears on his other side a moment later. You're not sure what you can actually do if this turns violent, but you're not going to let your friend face it alone. "Pay the penny," the butcher growls, "or give back the chicken." "I already ate the chicken." "Oh, that's not great." The butcher's face goes from red to purple. "Then you owe me a penny and a chicken." "I owe you nothing. You're trying to cheat me." Someone in the crowd of townspeople yells something. You can't quite make it out, but it sounds like bloody scholars followed by something about mothers that definitely isn't appropriate for a public market. A student yells back, "Something worse. This is going to get ugly." "Geoffrey," you grab his arm. "Just pay the penny. It's not worth it." "It's not about the penny," he hisses. "If we let them cheat us once, they'll do it again. And again. Until they've taken everything we have." He's not entirely wrong. The townspeople do try to cheat students. Everyone knows it. They overcharge for everything, knowing that most scholars are far from home and don't know the local prices. It's a constant, grinding exploitation that adds up over time. But right now, in this moment, with that butcher looking like he's about to explode, principles seem less important than survival. "Pay him," Edmund says quietly. "We'll figure it out later." Geoffrey hesitates. The crowd is pressing closer. You can feel the heat of bodies, the tension in the air. Someone is going to throw a punch any second now, and once that happens, it's not going to stop. Then a new voice cuts through the noise. "What's all this then?" Everyone turns. A man in church robes is pushing through the crowd. The university proctor, the official responsible for keeping students in line and protecting them from exactly this kind of situation. "This scholar owes me money," the butcher says, pointing at Geoffrey. "A penny and a chicken." "I paid what he asked," Geoffrey counters. "He's trying to add charges after the fact." The proctor looks at both of them. He's a tired man, you realise, grey at the temples, lines around his eyes. He's probably dealt with 100 situations exactly like this one. Did anyone witness the original transaction? Silence. Of course no one did. That's how these things work. The proctor sighs. "Scholar, pay the man his penny. Butcher, forget about the chicken. This is finished." Geoffrey opens his mouth to protest, but the proctor's look stops him cold. This isn't a negotiation. It's a judgment. And in disputes between students and townspeople, the proctor's word is final. Geoffrey digs into his pouch and produces a penny. He hands it over with visible reluctance. The butcher snatches it and disappears back to his stall, muttering about ungrateful scholars and the good old days. The crowd disperses. The tension bleeds away, leaving behind just the usual bustle of the market, like nothing happened. "That was close," Edmund says as you walk away. "That was robbery," Geoffrey says. "Sanctioned robbery. That chicken was worth 2 pennies at most. Now I'm out 3. "You're out 3 and you still have all your teeth. I call that a win." Geoffrey doesn't laugh. His jaw is tight, his hands clenched at his sides. You've never seen him this angry. "One day," he says quietly, "it's going to be different. One day they're going to push too far, and we're going to push back. Really push back. And then they'll see what happens when you treat scholars like garbage. You don't say anything. Neither does Edmund. But you remember those words. You'll remember them for years. That night you don't go to the tavern. None of you do. You sit in the common room instead, with no fire because fires are still forbidden, and you talk about home." Geoffrey, it turns out, was disowned. That's why he never goes back for holidays. His father wanted him to become a merchant like him. Geoffrey wanted to study. There was a fight. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. And now Geoffrey is here, alone, running out of money with no family waiting for him when this is over. "What will you do?" you ask. "After you graduate?" "Church, probably. Find some bishop who needs a secretary. It's not what I wanted, but it's something." He pauses. "What did you want?" "I don't know. My father wanted me to be educated. He never really said what for. I think he just wanted me to have options, to not be stuck like he is." Edmund nods slowly. "Same. My father spent his whole life smelling like piss so I wouldn't have to. That's the deal. We suffer through this so we can have something better." The 3 of you sit in silence for a while. Outside, the wind is howling. Inside, the cold is seeping through every crack in the walls. Somewhere in the dormitory, someone is coughing. The deep, rattling cough that everyone dreads, because it could be nothing or it could be the start of something terrible. "We should make a pact," Geoffrey says suddenly. "A what?" "A pact. The 3 of us. Whatever happens, wherever we end up, we look out for each other. Help each other. If one of us makes it and the others don't, the successful one helps the failures. You think about it. 7 years is a long time. A lot can change. People drift apart. Promises get forgotten. But right now, in this cold room, with these 2 people who've become closer to you than anyone except your own family, it feels right." "I'm in," you say. "Me too," Edmund says. Geoffrey grins. It's the first time he's smiled since the market. Then it's settled. The 3 of us. Brothers in suffering. Brothers in suffering, you and Edmund echo. It's silly, probably. A childish ritual that won't mean anything in a few years. But right now, it feels like the most important thing you've ever done. March comes, and with it, a hint of warmth. Not actual warmth, not yet, but the promise of it. The ice is melting, the mud is drying, your feet might actually survive. Your Latin is good enough now that you've been selected for a practice disputation. Nothing major, just a small exercise in front of your class. You have to defend the position that grammar is the most important subject in the trivium. You don't actually believe that. Logic seems way more useful, but that's not the point. The point is to argue convincingly for something, whether you believe it or not. Edmund helps you prepare. For 3 nights straight, you practice. He attacks your position from every angle, points out weaknesses, forces you to think faster, respond better, build stronger arguments. Grammar is the foundation, you say for the 100th time. Without grammar, there is no logic. Without logic expressed in language, there is no rhetoric. Grammar is the base upon which everything else stands. But a strong base is useless without a strong structure above it, Edmund counters. Logic gives us the framework. Grammar is just the material. Material is meaningless without form, but form cannot exist without material. Therefore material comes first. Therefore grammar comes first. Edmund pauses, thinks, then nods slowly. That's actually not bad. Really? Don't get cocky. There are 20 ways to tear that apart, but it's a start. The day of the disputation arrives. Your stomach is in knots. Your hands are sweating despite the cold. Richard is in the audience, watching with that smirk you've come to hate. You stand at the podium. The master nods. You begin. Grammar is the foundation of all learning. Your voice is shaking at first, but as you speak, as you fall into the rhythm of the argument, something changes. The words start to flow. The ideas connect. You can see the shape of it now. The architecture of a logic that Edmund helped you build. A student challenges you. But surely logic is more fundamental, as it governs the very process of thought. You're ready for this one. Thought without expression is meaningless. A perfect logical argument that cannot be communicated serves no purpose. Grammar gives thought its voice. Without that voice, logic remains silent and useless. The master nods. Not enthusiasm, but acknowledgement. You didn't embarrass yourself. Richard's smirk has faded. Just a little. Just enough to notice. When it's over, when you're walking out of the hall with Edmund and Geoffrey, you feel something you haven't felt in months. Hope. Maybe you can do this. Maybe 7 years of suffering will actually lead somewhere. Maybe your father's cows didn't die in vain. The spring sun is warm on your face. The birds are returning to Oxford, filling the air with song. Somewhere across town, a butcher is probably cheating another student. But right now, in this moment, you don't care. You survived another season. You held your own in a disputation. You have friends who would stand with you in a crowd. That's enough. For now, that's enough. Summer hits Oxford like a punishment from God. You thought winter was bad. You were wrong. Winter was just cold. Summer is something else entirely. The smell is the first thing you notice. It's always been bad, sure. Human waste in the streets, rotten food in the gutters, the occasional dead dog nobody bothers to move. But in winter, the cold kept everything sort of muted, frozen solid half the time. Now the heat unlocks every terrible smell the city has been storing up for months. It rises from the streets in waves. It seeps through every crack in the walls. It crawls into your nose and sets up permanent residence. Some days you can taste it, actually taste the air, and it's not good. The wealthy students have started carrying little bags of dried flowers and herbs, pressing them to their noses whenever they walk outside. Nose bags, Edmund calls them, and you can tell he thinks it's ridiculous. But honestly, you're a little jealous. Anything to make the smell less overwhelming. Your room is an oven. The timber walls that kept the cold out all winter now trap the heat inside. At night, you lie on your straw mat and feel the sweat pooling beneath you, soaking through your thin robe. Sleep comes in short, restless bursts. You wake up sticky and tired, stumble to the morning lecture, and spend the whole time fighting to keep your eyes open. The masters don't seem to notice the heat, or maybe they've just gotten used to it over decades of teaching in these stone halls. They drone on about grammar and logic and rhetoric while sweat drips down your back and flies buzz around your head. But there's good news too. You've started copying manuscripts. It happened almost by accident. Edmund introduced you to a monk from the nearby monastery, Brother Benedict, who oversees their copying projects. Edmund had been working for him since February, making decent money, and he finally convinced the monk to give you a chance. "Your handwriting is terrible," Brother Benedict said when he first looked at your sample, "but it's readable. And we're behind on our schedule. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, but you'll take it. The work is simple in concept and brutal in execution. You sit at a slanted desk, angled up at maybe 45 degrees, with the original manuscript propped above you on a little stand. You copy what you see, letter by letter, word by word, line by line. Your quill scratches across the parchment. Your back screams. Your eyes blur, and you do this for hours, 6, 7, 8 hours a day when lectures aren't in session. The pay is 2 pennies per page of clean copy. Sounds decent until you realise that a clean page takes you most of a day, more if you make mistakes, which you do. Constantly. One wrong letter, and you have to scrape it off with a knife, taking care not to tear through the parchment entirely. Then you write over the scrape spot, which never looks quite as good as the rest of the page. Brother Benedict inspects every page. He has this way of squinting at your work, mouth pressed into a thin line that makes your stomach clench. If the page isn't good enough, you don't get paid. You've lost 3 pages already this month. But when it works, when you finish a clean page and he nods and hands you 2 pennies, it feels like victory. Real, tangible progress. Money you earned with your own hands and your own skills. "You're getting better," Edmund says one evening looking over your latest work. "See? The letters are more even now, more consistent." You look at the page. He's right, actually. 3 months ago, your writing looked like a drunk spider had fallen into an inkwell and crawled across the parchment. Now it looks like actual words written by an actual person. Still not as good as yours, you say. I've been doing this for 5 years. Give it time. The money helps. God, does it help. You've repaired your shoes finally. Bought actual food a few times instead of surviving on tripe and weak ale. Even sent some money home to your family, along with a letter telling them you're doing well. Whether that's true or not is debatable, but you're alive, you're learning, you're earning. That has to count for something. It's late June when Edmund gets sick. At first, you think it's just the heat. Everyone's struggling with the heat. Edmund looks a little pale at breakfast. Picks at his food, says his stomach hurts. You tell him to drink more water, stay out of the sun. By afternoon he can't stand up. You find him in the dormitory, curled on his straw mat, shaking. His face has gone from pale to greenish grey. There's sweat pouring off him despite the fact that he's shivering like it's December. "I'm fine," he says through chattering teeth. "Just need to rest." He's not fine. You've seen this before, back home. A neighbour's son got sick like this one summer. Stomach cramps, fever, the constant rushing to the privy because his body was trying to expel everything he'd ever eaten. The neighbour's son died 3 days later. "We need to get you help," you say. "Can't afford it." "Edmund, we can't." He's right, of course. Physicians cost money. Real money. More money than either of you has. The university has a few doctors attached to it, but they mostly tend to masters and wealthy students. Poor scholars get prayers and good wishes. But you can't just watch your friend die. Geoffrey helps you carry Edmund to the infirmary anyway. It's a small building near the church, staffed by monks who have some training in medicine. They won't turn students away, even poor ones. They'll just ask for payment later when you can afford it. The monk who examines Edmund is old, with hands that shake slightly but eyes that miss nothing. He pokes at Edmund's stomach, looks at his tongue, smells his breath. "Dysentery," he announces. "The bloody flux. He needs rest, clean water and prayers." "Will he live?" The monk shrugs. "That's in God's hands." Not exactly reassuring. They keep Edmund in the infirmary for a week. You and Geoffrey take turns visiting, sitting by his bed, trying to keep his spirits up. He's too weak to talk much at first, just lies there with his eyes closed, barely conscious. You watch him breathe, count each rise and fall of his chest, wonder if this one will be the last. On the third night, sitting alone in the infirmary while Geoffrey sleeps back at the hall, you find yourself praying. Really praying, not just going through the motions like you do at mandatory chapel. Begging God to spare your friend. You've known Edmund less than a year, but he's the best friend you've ever had. He taught you grammar when the masters had given up on you. He introduced you to Brother Benedict. He believed you could do this even when you didn't believe it yourself. The thought of continuing without him is unbearable. "Don't you dare die," you whisper to his sleeping form. "Don't you dare." He doesn't die. By the 5th day, the fever breaks. By the 7th, he's sitting up, complaining about the food, demanding to know what he's missed in lectures. "You almost died," Geoffrey says. "Take it easy." "I can't afford to miss more classes. I'm already behind." "You're behind in being alive. That seems more important." Edmund scowls, but he stays in the infirmary another few days. When he finally walks out, leaning on you and Geoffrey for support, he looks like a strong wind could knock him over. His robes hang off him like sacks. The bones in his face stand out sharp under his skin. But he's alive. You buy him actual meat that night. A full meal, not scraps. It cost you 4 pennies, a full 2 days of copying work, and you don't care at all. "You didn't have to do that," he says, his eyes getting suspiciously wet. "Shut up and eat." The summer term limps to a close. You've been in Oxford almost a year now. Somehow. Against all odds and reasonable expectations, you've learned enough Latin to hold basic conversations. You can follow most lectures without getting completely lost. You've survived winter, survived the markets, survived illness and poverty, and a near riot over a chicken. You've made friends. Real ones. Brothers, practically. And you've started to believe just a little bit that you might actually make it through this. The masters announce the end of term in early July. Most students pack up and head home for the summer. Richard and his wealthy friends leave first, naturally, carried off in carts and on horses to their comfortable estates. You watch them go with something that's not quite jealousy anymore, more like detachment. They live in a different world than you, always have, always will. Edmund is still too weak to travel. Geoffrey, as usual, has nowhere to go, and you could go home, see your family, sleep in an actual bed. But the monastery needs copyists. Brother Benedict has offered you steady work through the summer. More money than you've ever had. Enough to build up savings for next year, maybe even enough to buy some of your own books instead of borrowing everything. You write to your father explaining the situation. You promise to come home at Christmas if you can. You send along every penny you can spare. His reply arrives 2 weeks later, in that careful handwriting you'd recognize anywhere. We understand. Do what you must. We are proud of you. That night, you cry. Not from sadness exactly. Something else. Something that feels like relief mixed with grief, mixed with love so strong it hurts. You're not a child anymore. You're not even really a student anymore, not in the way you were when you arrived. You're something in between, someone who's starting to figure out how the world works and how to survive in it. The summer stretches out in front of you, long and hot and full of work. You wake at dawn, copy manuscripts until noon, attend whatever lectures are still running in the abbreviated summer term, copy more manuscripts until dinner, study grammar by candlelight, sleep, repeat. It sounds monotonous. It kind of is. But there's a rhythm to it that feels almost peaceful. You know what each day will bring. You know what's expected of you, and you're meeting those expectations. Edmund gets stronger. By August, he's back to copying manuscripts alongside you, though he tires easily and has to take frequent breaks. Geoffrey picks up work too, though his handwriting is terrible, and Brother Benedict won't let him touch anything important. The three of you work side by side in the monastery scriptorium. The light filters in through narrow windows. The scratch of quills on parchment fills the silence. Occasionally one of you makes a quiet joke or complaint just to break up the tedium. It's not exciting, it's not glamorous, but it's good. One evening, walking back to the hall through streets finally cooling in the dusk, Geoffrey asks a question that's probably been on all your minds. Think we'll make it? All 7 years, Edmund considers. Statistically, probably not. Half of students drop out before finishing. I didn't ask for statistics. Then yes, I think we'll make it. Geoffrey looks at you. William? You think about your father selling his cows, your mother crying, the 17 pennies sewn into your cloak that felt like all the money in the world, the straw bed and the cold and the hunger and the fear. You think about Edmund almost dying, about the market nearly turning into a bloodbath, about all the ways this could have gone wrong and somehow didn't. Yeah, you say finally, I think we will. And here's the thing, standing there in the fading summer light, with your friends beside you and another year of survival behind you, you actually believe it. Not because you're confident, not because you're special, but because you've made it this far, because you've proven to yourself and everyone else that you can endure. That's what Oxford teaches you, really. Not just Latin and logic and rhetoric. It teaches you how to endure. Your bed is still straw. Your food is still mostly tripe. Your future is still uncertain. But you're here. You're alive. You're learning. 1 year down. 6 to go. 2 years. It doesn't seem possible, but here you are. 2nd October in Oxford. 3rd year of studies about to begin. The same straw bed. The same cold halls. The same endless Latin. And yet, nothing is the same at all. Your hands don't shake anymore when you speak in class. Your Latin flows almost naturally now, the words coming without that painful translation delay that used to make every sentence feel like pulling teeth. You've moved on from basic grammar to logic, dialectic they call it, the art of argument, and honestly, You kind of love it. Grammar was about memorizing rules. Logic is about thinking, really thinking, taking an idea apart, examining each piece, finding the flaws and the strengths. It's like a puzzle, except the puzzle is made of words and the prize is understanding how the world actually works. The texts are harder though. Aristotle, Boethius, Porphyry, names that used to make you want to run back to Somerset and never look at a book again. Now you spend your evenings hunched over borrowed copies, squinting at arguments about categories and predicates and universals. If Socrates is a man, Edmund reads aloud, and all men are mortal, then Socrates is mortal. Okay, but why? Because that's how syllogisms work? No, I mean, why is that true? What makes the logic actually work? Edmund looks at you like you've grown a second head. It just does. That's the whole point. Maybe. Or maybe there's something deeper underneath. Something about how ideas connect to reality. Something about the nature of truth itself. God, you really have changed. The farm boy who walked into Oxford 2 years ago would have punched current you in the face for being so pretentious. The class sizes are smaller now. Not by accident. Not by choice. Simple mathematics. Half the students who started with you are gone. Some left because they ran out of money. That's the most common reason. 7 years is a long time to survive on pennies and prayers. Their families couldn't keep sending support. Their copying work dried up. They ate their last meal, packed their few belongings, and walked back to wherever they came from. Some left because they failed. The examinations at the end of each year are brutal. Stand in front of a panel of masters, answer their questions. Defend your understanding. Get it wrong and you're done. No second chances, no appeals. Some left because they died. That one's less common than it used to be, before the plague swept through. But illness still takes a few every year. Fevers, infections, the bloody flux that almost killed Edmund. You never know who's going to wake up fine and who's going to be carried out in a sheet. Martin was one of them. You didn't know him well. He sat 3 rows behind you in logic lectures, a quiet kid from somewhere in Norfolk. Red hair, big ears, nervous laugh that came out at inappropriate moments. He got sick in early September. Fever first, then sweating, then the shaking that wouldn't stop. The infirmary monks did what they could. Prayers, cold cloths, some herbal concoction that smelled like rotting vegetables. He died on the 3rd day. There was a funeral. You attended, standing in the back of the chapel with Edmund and Geoffrey, watching the monks carry out their rituals. The body was wrapped in cheap linen. No family present. They probably don't even know yet that their son is dead. Afterward, walking back to the hall, Geoffrey said something that stuck with you. That could be any of us, at any time, for any reason. Nobody argued, because he was right. Life here is fragile. You forget that sometimes getting caught up in the rhythm of lectures and studies and copying work, but death is always lurking, in the water, in the air, in the food that might be slightly off, in the crowds that might turn violent. Every day you survive is a minor miracle. Every term you complete is a victory against odds that don't care if you win or lose. You write home more often now. The letters are still formal, still polite, still full of half-truths about how well you're doing. But there's something else underneath now. Gratitude, maybe, or just awareness. Your father replies when he can afford the paper. Short notes about the farm, the weather, your brother's progress at the local school. He never says he misses you. He never says he's proud. But you can read between the lines. The fact that he keeps writing at all says everything. Your mother includes a small token sometimes. A dried flower from the garden. a scrap of fabric from a dress she's making. Things that have no practical value but mean the world anyway. You keep them all in a small wooden box under your bed. Some nights, when the loneliness gets too heavy, you take them out and just hold them. Proof that somewhere, someone loves you. Proof that you still have a home to go back to if everything falls apart. The town is getting worse. You can feel it in the streets. The way townspeople look at students now. Not just resentment anymore. Something closer to hatred. Part of it is economics. The university pays no taxes. Students pay no taxes. But students eat the town's food, drink the town's ale, use the town's services. They take and give nothing back except trouble. Part of it is the court system. When a student commits a crime, they're tried in church courts, not civil ones. Church courts are gentler, no executions, no mutilations. A student can assault a townsman and get off with penance and prayers while the townsman's broken jaw heals on its own. Part of it is just history, centuries of bad blood. Fights and riots and deaths that nobody's forgotten. Each generation passes down the grievances to the next, and the pile of resentments just keeps growing. There's talk of something big coming, whispers in the taverns, arguments that get louder and angrier every week. Jeffrey hears things from his contacts around town. Merchants who are tired of being cheated, labourers who are tired of being beaten, fathers who are tired of watching their daughters get harassed by students who know they'll never face real consequences. It's going to explode, Jeffrey says one night. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but soon. And when it does, it's going to be bad. You believe him. You've seen the way the butcher in the market looks at you, the way the innkeeper's smile never reaches his eyes, the way groups of townsmen go quiet when students walk past. Something is building. You just hope you're not around when it breaks. Third year brings new roommates. The old ones moved on. Some graduated early, some dropped out, some just drifted away to other halls. Now you're sharing your space with a different group. Younger students mostly. First years who look as terrified as you felt 2 years ago. One of them reminds you of yourself. His name is Peter. Farm boy from somewhere west of here. Terrible Latin. No money. Enormous eyes that seem to be constantly asking, "What have I gotten myself into?" You try to help him when you can. Explain how the copying system works. Introduce him to Brother Benedict. Show him which taverns are safe and which ones will rob you blind. "Why are you being so nice?" he asks one day. "Because someone did it for me." Jeffrey mostly. Jeffrey who showed you around that first terrifying night. Jeffrey who explained the rules that nobody writes down. Jeffrey who's still here, still fighting, still surviving. You owe him, and the only way to pay that debt is to pass it forward. The autumn nights are getting longer. You spend more time in the library now, when you can get access. The university has a collection of texts that would have seemed like treasure when you were a child. Hundreds of manuscripts, carefully preserved, available to any student with the permission to enter. Most nights, you're there until the candles burn down, reading by flickering light, taking notes on your wax tablet, trying to squeeze every drop of knowledge out of every page. Aristotle is becoming clearer. Not easy, never easy, but clearer. You're starting to understand how the arguments fit together, how one idea leads to another, how logic isn't just a set of rules but a way of seeing the world. The unexamined life is not worth living. That's Socrates, not Aristotle, but the point holds. You came here to learn, and you're finally actually learning. Not just memorizing facts to regurgitate on examinations. Understanding, thinking, growing. It's a slow process. Painful sometimes. You hit walls where nothing makes sense and you want to throw your books into the river and go home, but you push through. And on the other side, there's this feeling of expansion, like your mind is stretching to accommodate new ideas. Hard to explain to anyone who hasn't felt it. Probably sounds ridiculous, but it's real. Edmund has a plan now. Church law, he says. That's where the money is. You study theology, you get ordained, you find a position somewhere, maybe a cathedral, maybe a bishop's household, steady work, actual pay, no more boiling leather for a living. I thought you wanted to escape your father's trade, not join a new one. The church isn't a trade, it's a calling. Since when do you have a calling? He grins. Since I figured out the calling pays better than copying manuscripts. You can't argue with that. The church is practically the only reliable employer for educated men. Government positions exist, but they're mostly reserved for nobles and their friends. Medicine requires years more study. Law is an option, but a risky one. The church, though, the church always needs literate men who can read documents and write letters and keep records. It's not glamorous. But it's survival. Geoffrey's plan is different. I'm going to teach, he says. Get my master's degree, stay at the university, become one of them. That takes forever. I've got nothing but time and no money. I'll figure it out. He sounds more confident than he should. But that's Geoffrey, always believing things will work out even when all evidence suggests otherwise. And you? What's your plan? Honestly, you still don't know. 2 years in and the future is still this vague, terrifying fog. You're getting an education, sure, but for what? To do what? The farm is always there, waiting. If everything fails, you can go home and take over from your father. It's not what he wanted for you, but it's a life, a simple life, a known life, or you could stay. Push through all 7 years, become a master of arts. Join the educated class. Find some position somewhere that uses your skills. The choice feels impossible most days, so you don't make it. You just keep moving forward, one lecture at a time, one term at a time, trusting that eventually the path will become clear. Maybe that's enough. Maybe survival is its own kind of success. The fire in the common room crackles softly. Outside, the October wind howls. Edmund is already asleep, his breathing slow and even. Geoffrey is muttering something in his dreams, probably rehearsing arguments for tomorrow's disputation. You lie on your straw mat, staring at the ceiling, thinking about nothing and everything. 2 years down, 5 to go. The weight of that should be crushing. But somehow, tonight, it feels almost manageable. You've made it this far. You'll make it further. And somewhere in the darkness a church bell rings. Midnight. Another day beginning. Another chance to survive. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will bring whatever it brings. Tonight, you rest. 5 years. You've been here 5 years. The boy who walked through Oxford's gates with bleeding feet and 17 pennies feels like a stranger now. Someone you used to know. Someone who didn't understand anything about how the world actually worked. February brings cold rain and the promise of worse to come. The streets run with mud and worse things. Everyone huddles indoors when they can, venturing out only when necessary. It's the 10th of the month, St. Scholastica's Day. A saint's feast. Nothing special. You're in your room when it starts, copying a manuscript actually. Your handwriting has gotten good enough that Brother Benedict trusts you with important work now. Careful lines of Latin, letter by letter, while the winter light fades outside. Edmund is there too, studying for his theology examination. Geoffrey is out somewhere, The tavern, probably. He spends more time there than anywhere else these days. The first thing you notice is the bells. Not the normal bells, not the call to prayer or the marking of hours. Something different, something wrong. The deep, urgent tolling that means trouble. You look up. Edmund looks up. Your eyes meet. "Town bell," he says quietly. Then, a moment later, another sound. Higher pitched. Closer. University bell. St. Martin's calling the townspeople. St. Mary's calling the scholars. Both at once. Both urgent. Both angry. You've heard stories about what this means. Every student has. When both bells ring together, it means war. Stay here, you say, though you're not sure why. Where else would you go? The noise builds outside. Shouting. Running feet. The clash of something against something else. Wood on wood. Metal on stone. Sounds that shouldn't exist on a quiet February evening. Edmund is at the window now, peering out into the gathering dark. "There's crowd," he says. "A lot of people, coming this way." You join him. The street below is filling with bodies. Men with clubs, with knives, with whatever they could grab. Torches flickering. Faces twisted with rage. Townspeople. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. And they're heading toward the student halls. "We need to move," you say. "Where?" "Anywhere. Not here." You grab what matters. Your box of letters from home. The small knife you use for cutting parchment. Edmund grabs his books, the ones he's borrowed and can't afford to lose. The main door of the hall is already barricaded when you get there. Other students have beaten you to it. Furniture piled against the entrance. Faces pale with fear. They started at the swindle stock, someone says. A first year whose name you can't remember. His voice is shaking. Some students complained about the wine, threw it at the landlord, and now he doesn't finish. He doesn't have to. The swindle stock. The tavern where you had your first drink in Oxford, where Geoffrey almost got into that fight over a chicken, where you've spent countless evenings talking and laughing and pretending everything was fine, the place where it all went wrong. The noise outside is getting louder. You can hear individual voices now, screaming for blood, screaming for revenge, years of resentment boiling over into something unstoppable. "They've got people from the countryside," someone else says. "Farmers, labourers, armed." The barricade shudders. Something heavy slams against the door from outside. "Upstairs," Edmund says. "Now." You run. Up the narrow staircase through the dormitory to the highest room you can find. A small chamber under the eaves, barely big enough for 3 people. No windows facing the street. Relatively safe. Relatively. You crouch there in the darkness, listening to Oxford tear itself apart below. The violence goes on for hours, for days. You don't see most of it. You hear it. The screams, the crashes. The awful silence between attacks that's somehow worse than the noise. Food runs out on the 2nd day, water on the 3rd. You drink what's left in the wash basin and try not to think about what's floating in it. Geoffrey finds you on the evening of the 2nd day. He's bleeding from a cut on his forehead, his robe's torn, but he's alive. He'd been trapped in a different hall, hiding in a cellar while townspeople ransack the rooms above. "They're killing everyone they find," he says. His voice is flat, hollow. "I saw bodies in the street. Students. Some of them..." He stops, swallows hard. "Some of them didn't have faces anymore." You don't ask what that means. You don't want to know. The 3rd day brings quiet. Not peace, just exhaustion. The rioters have spent their fury. They drift back to their homes, their farms, their lives, leaving behind a city in ruins. You emerge slowly, carefully, half expecting an attack that doesn't come. The streets look like a battlefield, broken furniture, shattered glass, dark stains on the cobblestones that you refuse to examine closely. Bodies too, covered with cloths now, waiting for burial. 63 scholars dead, someone says. Maybe more. The count keeps changing. You recognize some of the covered shapes, by their shoes, by the scraps of robe visible at the edges. Students you knew, students you'd studied with, eaten with, complained with, gone. Peter is among them, the first year you'd been helping, the farm boy who reminded you of yourself. He'd tried to run, apparently, made it almost to the city gates before they caught him. You stand over his body for a long time, not crying. Not really feeling anything, just standing. Edmund finds you there. "We should go," he says gently. "There's nothing we can do for him now. He's right. You know he's right. But your feet won't move. He wrote to his mother last week, you say. Told her he was doing well, learning so much, making friends. William. She doesn't know yet. Nobody's told her. She probably thinks he's fine, thinks he's sitting in a lecture right now, taking notes, dreaming about the future." Edmund puts a hand on your shoulder, doesn't say anything. There's nothing to say. Eventually you let him lead you away. The king's men arrive within the week. They find in favour of the university. Of course they do. The town is punished, the mayor imprisoned, fines imposed, an annual penance demanded that will last for centuries. Every St. Scholastica's Day from now on, the mayor and 63 townspeople will walk bareheaded to St. Mary's Church. They'll swear to uphold the university's privileges, pay a penny for each scholar killed. Justice, they call it. Victory. It doesn't feel like either. Spring comes eventually. The blood washes away with the rains. The broken buildings get repaired or torn down. Life continues because life always continues, whether it makes sense or not. But Oxford is different now. You're different. The easy laughter is gone. The casual complaints about bad food and cold rooms. The innocent belief that tomorrow will be more or less like today. You've seen what people are capable of, what they'll do when the restraints come off, how quickly civilization can collapse into savagery, and you've learned something else. Something harder to put into words. You've learned that survival isn't guaranteed, that all the studying and struggling and hoping means nothing if someone decides your life is worth less than their anger. That knowledge changes you, hardens something inside you that used to be soft. The manuscript copying feels different now. Each page isn't just work anymore, it's defiance, proof that you're still here, still breathing, still creating something that might outlast you. The studying feels different too, more urgent, more precious. Every lecture could be the last. Every disputation could be interrupted by violence. So you pay attention, you absorb, you learn. Geoffrey changes most of all. He's quieter now. The jokes have stopped. He spends his evenings in the library instead of the tavern, working with a fierce concentration that borders on obsession. "What's driving you?" you ask him one night. "Survival," he says without looking up. "Knowledge is the only weapon that matters, the only thing they can't take from you. They took plenty of things. Things, yes. Lives, yes. But the ideas in my head, those are mine forever. And the more I have, the safer I am." You're not sure that's true. The smartest scholar in Oxford died just as easily as the dumbest. Knowledge didn't stop the clubs or the knives. But you understand what he means. It's about control, about having something that belongs to you in a world that can strip everything else away. Edmund buries himself in theology. The big questions. Why does God allow suffering? What's the purpose of evil? How do we find meaning in chaos? He doesn't find answers. Nobody ever finds answers to those questions, but the searching itself seems to help. Gives him something to focus on besides the memories. You focus on finishing. 2 years left. Maybe less if you work hard enough. Get your degree. Get out. Find some position somewhere that uses your skills but doesn't require you to live in a city that tried to kill you. The dream of staying, of becoming a master, of teaching the next generation, that's gone. Burned away with everything else. You'll take what Oxford has to offer and leave. Simple as that. Your father's letters arrive more frequently now. He's heard about the riot, of course. News travels, even to small farms in Somerset. He wants you to come home. Begs you, in his careful way, to abandon this dangerous place and return to safety. You write back. Explain that you've come too far to quit now, that the danger has passed, that you're being careful. Half-truths mostly. The danger hasn't passed, it's just sleeping, and careful only gets you so far when the world decides to burn. But you can't leave. Not yet. Not after everything you've sacrificed to get here. Not after Peter and all the others died for the same dream you're chasing. Quitting now would mean their deaths were meaningless, and you can't accept that. You won't. Summer returns. Another hot, stinking season in a city still healing from its wounds. You copy manuscripts. You attend lectures. You practice for your examinations. You eat your tripe and drink your weak ale and sleep on your straw mat and try not to think about the past. The nightmares come sometimes, dark figures with torches. Running through endless corridors, Peter's face frozen in that final moment of fear. You wake up sweating, heart pounding, hands reaching for a knife that isn't there. Then you lie in the darkness, breathing slowly, reminding yourself where you are, who you are, that you survived, that you're still here. The ceiling above your bed has become familiar over the years, the pattern of cracks in the plaster, the stain in the corner that looks a bit like a dog if you squint. Small, stupid details that mean nothing and everything. Home. This cold, uncomfortable room is home now. These people are your family. This life, hard as it is yours. You'll defend it, whatever it takes. 2 more years. Just 2 more years. You close your eyes. Breathe in. Breathe out. The city is quiet tonight. The bells are silent. Somewhere outside. A dog barks once and falls still. Tomorrow will bring whatever it brings. But tonight, in this moment, you're safe. That's enough. For now, that's enough. 7 years. 7 years since you walked through those gates with bleeding feet and a head full of dreams. 7 years of cold rooms and thin straw and endless Latin. 7 years of survival. And now it's over. The morning of your final examination dawns grey and soft, like every other Oxford morning. You've barely slept. Your stomach is a knot of nerves. Your hands won't stop shaking. But you're ready. You have to be ready. There's no more time to prepare. The examination hall feels different today. Smaller somehow. More personal. The panel of masters sits at a long table, their faces neutral, their robes pooling around them in waves of dark fabric. You recognize most of them, men who've taught you, challenged you, occasionally praised you over the years. They ask their questions in Latin, you answer in Latin, back and forth, testing and probing, searching for weaknesses in your knowledge. Grammar, logic, rhetoric, the trivium that's been the foundation of everything. You've dreamed about these concepts, argued about them with Edmund and Geoffrey until the candles burned down, written thousands of words about them on borrowed parchment. Now you speak them aloud, one last time, defending what you've learned against minds sharper than your own. The hours blur together. Your voice grows hoarse. Sweat trickles down your back despite the chill in the air. And then, finally, it's over. The head examiner nods, says something in Latin that takes a moment to register. You've passed. You've actually passed. The graduation ceremony takes place 3 days later. They call it Inceptio, beginning. Because receiving your degree isn't an ending at all. It's the start of something new, the moment you join the Guild of Masters, the fellowship of educated men, the community of scholars who've earned the right to teach. You wear a long black gown with a hood, the same style scholars have worn for centuries, originally meant for warmth in these drafty, unheated halls, now a symbol of everything you've achieved. The Latin washes over you, ancient words, spoken countless times before, binding you to a tradition older than anyone alive, licentia legendi, regendi, disputandi, license to lecture, to rule, to dispute, the formal permission to do what you've spent 7 years learning to do, teach, think, argue. Pass on knowledge to the next generation of trembling first years who'll walk through these gates with bleeding feet and impossible dreams. Edmund stands beside you. He made it too. Theology, just like he planned. He'll take a position with a bishop somewhere, writing letters and managing accounts and slowly climbing the church hierarchy. Not glamorous, but stable, safe. A life his father could never have imagined for a tanner's son. Geoffrey is there as well, the only one of you who stayed for the full master's course. He'll remain at Oxford, teaching logic to students who remind him of us. Some nights, he says, he still can't sleep, still sees the torches and the running feet and the bodies in the streets. But he's here. He survived. We all did. After the ceremony, there's a feast, not much of one by rich standards. Bread and meat and ale shared among friends, but to you, it tastes like victory. You give a short speech, your first lecture as a legitimate scholar. It's tradition. You speak about grammar, because that's where everything started. About how words create meaning, how language shapes thought, how understanding the structure of speech opens doors to understanding the structure of reality itself. When you finish, the masters applaud. Politely, the way masters always do. But Edmund is grinning like an idiot, and Geoffrey is actually wiping something from his eye, and for a moment you forget everything else. You did it, against every odd, despite every obstacle. You actually did it. The diploma is a rolled piece of parchment tied with a ribbon, sheepskin technically. You hold it carefully, afraid to damage something you work so long to earn. 7 years of your life, reduced to a few words in Latin on animal hide. Worth it. Every frozen night, every empty stomach, every moment of fear and doubt and exhaustion. Worth it. Your father arrives for the ceremony. He's older than you remember, greyer, more stooped. The years have been hard on him, harder than they should have been. 2 cows sold, countless pennies scraped together, all for this moment. He doesn't say much, never has, but when he sees you in your scholar's gown, diploma in hand, something changes in his face, a softening, a release. You did well, he says quietly. That's all. 3 words. But from him, it's everything. You travel home together, the same road you walked 7 years ago, in reverse. Past the villages and fields and forests that seemed so vast when you were 14. They feel smaller now, familiar, manageable. Your mother cries when she sees you, holds you like you're still a child, even though you're taller than her now, broader in the shoulders, a grown man with a university degree. Your brother has grown too, no longer the small boy you left behind. He's learning to read, your father says, wants to follow in your footsteps. Maybe not Oxford, but something, somewhere. The cycle continues. You don't stay long at home. There's a position waiting, a minor post at a cathedral school, teaching Latin to the sons of merchants. Not prestigious, not wealthy, but it's a start, a foundation to build on. The farm feels strange now, too quiet, too slow. You've spent 7 years in the chaos of Oxford, and the peaceful rhythms of rural life don't quite fit anymore. But standing in the doorway of your childhood home, watching the sun set over fields you used to work, you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Gratitude, not just for surviving, for everything. The struggle and the suffering and the small moments of joy that made it bearable. The friends who became brothers, the masters who pushed you to be better, the family who sacrificed everything so you could have this chance. You think about Peter sometimes, the first year who didn't make it. You wonder what he would have become given 7 years, what knowledge he would have gathered, what life he would have built. There's no way to know, no way to repay the debt. All you can do is live well enough for both of you. The years ahead will bring their own challenges. New struggles, new victories, new losses. That's just how life works. You've learned that much at least. But for now, in this moment, you allow yourself to rest. And here you are, lying in your bed, safe, warm, full. Think about that for a second. Your bed is soft, not straw on bare wood, not a thin mat shared with strangers in a freezing dormitory. An actual bed with actual blankets in a room that belongs to you. Your stomach is full, not from tripe or weak ale or bread so stale it could break teeth. Real food, good food, as much as you wanted. The air around you is clean, no smell of waste in the streets, no rotting garbage, no sweet sickly scent of plague lurking in every shadow. You're safe. No riots outside your window, no mobs with torches, no bells calling you to hide or fight or flee. Just quiet, just peace. These are things William would have given anything for. Things he dreamed about on cold nights when sleep wouldn't come. The simple comforts you take for granted every single day. 700 years separate you from that world. 700 years of progress and change, and slowly, painfully, making life a little bit easier for the next generation. William never saw electric lights, never knew antibiotics or central heating or running water. He lived and studied and struggled in conditions that would break most modern people within a week. But he made it through. He survived. And in surviving, he became part of something larger than himself. A chain of knowledge stretching back through centuries, passed from teacher to student to teacher again, eventually reaching all the way to you, every book you've ever read. Every fact you've ever learned, every moment of education you've ever received. It all started somewhere, with someone like William, copying manuscripts by candlelight, fighting to understand ideas that had survived 1,000 years before him. You're part of that chain now, whether you know it or not, whether you think about it or not. The knowledge in your head connects you to everyone who came before. Pretty wild to think about, really. Lying there in the dark, connected to centuries of human struggle and achievement, all those lives, all those stories, all those cold nights and empty stomachs and small triumphs against impossible odds. And now you, safer in your bed, ready to sleep, Let that warmth settle over you. The warmth William never had. The comfort he could only imagine. You've earned it in your own way. Just by being here, just by existing at the end of a very long chain of survival and sacrifice, your eyes are getting heavy now. That's good. That's how it should be. The world outside is quiet. The day's worries are fading. Tomorrow will bring whatever it brings, but tonight is for rest. Think of William if you want. Picture him on that final night in Oxford, lying on his straw mat for the last time, knowing that tomorrow he'd walk out those gates as a changed man. The fear and the pride and the exhaustion all mixed together. The knowledge that he'd done something meaningful with his brief time on earth. He slept well that night, better than he had in years. And now it's your turn. Let your breath slow down. Let your muscles relax. Let the weight of the day lift away, leaving nothing but peace. You're safe here. You're comfortable. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. The darkness is soft around you, welcoming, like a blanket made of silence. Close your eyes. Let go. Sleep now. You've earned it.